Engines. What do you need them for? And what are engines even? We will look at the types of engines in From the Depth and what they do. Engines in From the Depth generate power, and there are a number of different engines to select from. So here we have my little plane. It's not so little, but the engine in this one is a steam engine. If we go to this Daddy Blade by clicking Q, you can see that we have selected motor drive to be 10. We actually don't need motor drive for Daddy Blades to work, but this will heavily increase the power output, but also of course the engine consumption. So if you didn't know this before, Daddy Blades is actually something you can use for free propulsion if you select motor drive to 0. They'll still work, but not as powerful. As you can see, we dropped there a little bit. So Daddy Blades, well, we set them up to use as much engine power as possible. And what also uses engine power, you can see here, we have jet engines. The jet engines actually do not use fuel directly. They use this engine power pool. If you look at the lower right corner of my screen, you can see the current engine power and how much of it is used. So we have a rather powerful engine in this, and we don't need this engine power actually. We have an over-dimensioned engine for this one. But this is because we want a big steam boiler, as we also have steam jets. Steam jets, as you might imagine, do not use engine power. So I know it's a little bit confusing, and we shall clear some things up. Some propulsion systems use engine power, and some do not. The most common propulsion systems does use engine, like propellers for boats, they use engine power. If we go down to air, all these jet engines also use engine power. You can see. Engines, they generate something that's called power. And you can see the max power use of each unit if you hover over them like this. Max power usage. Alright, then we have some systems that do not use engine power. Like custom jet engines, these ones, they use fuel directly. And Daddy Blades, they can use engine power if we want them to, but we don't need them to use engine power for them to work. They will just be a lot more efficient, so you could say they use engine power for mostly parts. Under wheels, well, wheels, they do use engine power. There are mainly 3 ways in which you can generate engine power. And one is of course to use the fuel engines to generate engine power. You can also use steam engines to generate engine power. And lastly, you can use electric engines to generate engine power. Alright, let's check out the differences of these 3 systems. The most simple but also most complex ways to generate engine power is to use electric engines. And now electric engines, they require batteries in order to function. And to load your batteries, you need something to fill up with electricity for the batteries so that they are charged. Because if you don't have any charged batteries, your engines will not work. The electric engines will not work. They produce 90 power right now, and they can be loaded by this one, RTG. They just load batteries magically, but these are super expensive. Other ways to load the batteries is to use a small turbine generator or a larger turbine generator. You can put this on top of a steam pipe and, well, use this steam to load up the engine in order to charge up your batteries. And you can also go into your fuel engine, and here you can see battery charge fraction. It's set up by 10%, I believe, by default, but you can set it to only load batteries. This is the fraction of the RPM that gets routed to charge your batteries. But this is only a little overview, because this is one of the least usual ways to generate power, but electric engines is possible. You can see this one is spinning, but this one isn't spinning. And that is because the power priority is set to minimum for this one. This means that if it's set to minimum, it will only activate when the other systems do not generate power. If you want backup engines, you can set them all to minimum. If you do not want them as backup engine, but a main engine, you can set them to maximum, so that they will always be on. But having batteries and some electric engines and set them to the minimum here can be a smart way to have backup power for your system. Alright, here we have the steam engine, and as I said, this also does generate power. It generates power by using the pistons. There are small and large pistons to choose from. Here you can see the maximum power creation. Now this is the maximum amount of power that your engine can output. The maximum RPM for this gearbox and piston setup is 3000. So of course it can't be over 3000 here, but we can drag it down to create even less power than what we currently have, so it only produces 90. Doing that will let your steam engine focus more of its power on other things it might also be doing. So when you know how much power you need for your steam engine build, you go into this one and you set the maximum power creation to a little bit over what you need, and then your craft will be much more efficient. And steam engines, well, they use material directly. Material which are stored in these boxes here. You can see material storage. They use these resources directly and burn them to make power. Fuel engines, they actually also use material and burn these materials in the fuel engine to make engine power. But they can't use these directly. No, they use these ones, material fuel storage tank. So if we go in here, we can see on here, fuel storage, we have fuel storage. And these tanks, they do actually store material as well. They don't store fuel, because fuel is not like a resource. Material is a resource, and these boxes store, well, material. The feature of these fuel boxes are, anyways, to make it so that your material stored in any other container anywhere on the ship, so if we have this one makes sure that the fuel engines and custom jet engines can access the material as fuel. So it basically works like some weird kind of converter thing. It transforms normal material to material that are usable as fuel. So we could basically describe fuel storage tanks as some kind of funnel blocks that make your, storage of materials accessible as fuel. And now it's, this puts the question here, how many do you need? Well, you can see that materials extractable per minute is 3,600. And that's a lot more than we need. So if we go here, we can see we removed it, it's 3,150, a lot. We estimate that you require a maximum of 1,551 materials extractable per minute as fuel. So we have a lot more fuel tanks than we actually need. And this might be good to actually know, because fuel tanks, they are not super explosive or anything like that, but they are flammable. So they might do a little bit damage to blocks around it. You can see they are flammable. However, these ones, wow, they are explosive. So fuel tanks are not in any way as dangerous as ammo boxes, but you should keep your fuel tanks safe because they are flammable. And fire won't spread because fire isn't really a thing, but understand it as fuel boxes are more easily destroyed than normal blocks, so keep them safe. And if they are destroyed, you can't use the material as fuel anymore, so keep them safe. The first step in choosing what kind of engine you need is to think about, do you actually need an engine? This craft does currently not have any engine. And as you can see, we are still airborne because we are kind of light. Very nice. However, you can see that we are using jet engines. And to use these jet engines, we of course need engine power. We can see that this one, if we go into huge jet engine, max power usage 1080. It also says this on the menu when you hover it over. So to be able to go forward in full speed, we need at least 1000, and we need some for steering as well. But we could exchange these for daddy blades, actually, and we wouldn't need an engine. So if we go like this, or we click Q, and we can say it to be pusher preset. Beautiful. Now we can actually use this and, you know, go where we want. We don't need an engine for this craft. Of course, we also need to have daddy blades to steer around with as well. But as you can see here, if we say to go there, and look there, we slowly but surely move forwards without having any engine. But of course, if you want to have an aircraft that's a little bit more armored, a little bit more heavy and stuff like that, and probably a lot more quicker, you probably need engines. But I'm just trying to make you understand that the first thing of getting an engine is to realize, do you actually need an engine? If you don't need an engine, well, skip it, because you will be a lot more stealthy without an engine. However, for almost all your builds, you will come to the conclusion that you will need an engine. And well, I've armored the underside of this thing, so if I unfreeze it, we can see that we are losing altitude. This means it's not powerful enough to stay afloat without an engine. So let's check into our options. One thing we can do is to add an steam engine. Alright, so to make a steam engine, select small, medium or large gearbox, and you will usually need to hold yourself inside that area. So this might be a little bit confusing, but when you click on the gearbox and spawn it, and then when you click on the gearbox, you get to this submenu where you have your parts here. So we have crankshafts, and we have pistons, and we're going to make the minimum steam engine. Like that, it's now connected, small boiler, and a small little dial here. We can have larger boilers, by the way, for like small steam engines. You don't need to have the correct size for the boilers to your setup. But the steam goes connected up into the back, and while you can connect them up directly to this one, this is the output. And you can put this output to somewhere else, like another piston, for example, to increase efficiency. Now you can see this one starts up, and we have started generating power. If we go to this block and click Q, you can select the maximum power here. Then we can go to this one here, and we can select burn rate. So if we wanted to create less engine power per second, well, in that case, we will need to go here and select the burn rate to maybe halve it and make it use less materials. Anyways, you can see that this piston is going really slowly, and we would need more boilers, more of these boiler blocks, to be able to have better pressure to make it go faster and generate a lot more power than it currently does. But that's just a quick showcase of a steam engine and basically how it works. So let's move on. And then we have the expensive easy option that's probably more useful for satellites and stuff. Here we have a big energy generating generator thing. Alright, so we generate electricity, fantastic, and well, then we can add a couple of batteries like this. And then we have electric engines. And the electric engines, well, they connect up to the batteries. So we put them on the batteries, and they will be... So each engine needs a battery. And here we can see these generate 180 each, and this generates a lot of energy for them. And you can hover over the battery to see here how much it is charged. So usually one engine per battery should be fine, as long as you have a decent amount of energy generation. You know, if you have a lot of batteries and when they are charged, they will keep the vehicle alive for quite some time without needing like materials for it. So that can be a really good backup solution. But usually I don't think that electric engines are super useful. But in very small crafts and as backup, and as, you know, on satellites, of course, it's very nice to have. Let us move on to fuel engines instead. And when you go over fuel engines, it's a lot of nice presets you can actually use. Like this, here we have a preset which is a very like eco-friendly, as in uses very few materials. Because it has, you know, these turbochargers and stuff like that. There is turbochargers that, and yeah, cylinder carbureted both. You can set up immensely complex engines, you know, with this. And it will be, you know, it will use less material, but they will be larger and bulkier and won't generate as much power as an injector engine, for example. But they will provide a good couple of lifetime for your materials. They don't eat up all the materials as the injector engines do. Here you can have a big injector engine. And as you can see, this injector engine is it's pretty large. And when you make injector engines, you have to make sure that the exhausts can exit the vehicle. When you make any fuel engine actually, or steam engine, the exhausts have to be able to exit the vehicle. And if I put a block here, the exhaust thinks it doesn't exit the vehicle in a good way. They need a straight line outwards to be able to exit. And as you can see, this engine is pretty insane. It's an injector engine. It eats a lot of materials, but we almost have 10,000 thrust now, so that's really something. So if I release the vehicle here, you can see it has a lot of power. Yeah, fantastic. And if you wonder why it shakes a lot, it's because the stability stuff isn't set up correctly. But of course, these ones can be put flush onto hull to exit like that. But you can also do something like that. You can go into blocks, into air. And under air, you can see ducts. And under ducts, you can make basically a tunnel all the way out like this. So, yeah, they can get released through the ducts. So that's pretty useful. So you can see that this engine, it's really powerful and really big, and it's a lot of materials, and maybe we don't need this much power. But it does offer us more than enough, so that's one good thing. The previous engine, as you can see here, didn't offer us enough power. You can see in the lower right corner that the engine power is, it basically eats up all of it, and we are maintaining altitude, but we have trouble having, yeah, we can't use the thrust properly. But to show you the principle behind the injector engine, we will make a small injector engine which will be perfect for this little build. So we go to fuel engines and have this one here. We can add this block here and make sure it has forward and backwards. We have a crankshaft, and we add 4 cylinders to this crankshaft. And we have this injector block here. The injector block have 2 suction cups, which means 2 connection points. So they can actually share the injector block like that. Beautiful. Now I'm freezing the vehicle in the air to mix up and spaz out. Now these engines get pretty hot, so maybe you saw on the last engine we spawned here that they actually have 2 exhaust pipes per cylinder. And this is required for it to be able to cool fast enough. So we can add like this, and we can connect all these exhausts together again and it will work perfectly fine. You can see it's not overheating anymore. And another block we can use to help cool our engines is the radiator. They're pretty bulky and pretty large, but you can place them here, and all blocks that are attached, all cylinders that are attached to the engine, you know, they get cooled. These radiators together can cool it with 9 Celsius per second all. So this engine will definitely not overheat now. And that's that. Now you should know all the basic about engines and power, as well as a lot of related stuff. So hope this helped you to choose the correct engine for your build. And remember, this is engine power. Custom jet engines, they use fuel directly, and that's another tutorial. So see you in future. This is Jimodism signing out.